Before you become a general, you have to be a soldier. Hey everybody, welcome to the Toy Talks podcast. It is a day late. And if you're on my social media platforms, you would have seen where I kind of explained what happened. I was literally recording. I had literally come to the end of recording. I was editing. I don't know what I pressed and I lost everything. And I was so upset. I managed to recover some of the recording and then I did a bit more and I thought, okay, right, I need to put something out, and I put it out. And the whole of last night I was tossing and turning. I did not sleep, not a wink. And then I got out of bed at about 5 a.m. and I just deleted it. I deleted what I'd uploaded because I felt like when I do Toya Talks, every time I record, every time I speak on certain issues, I do it to the best of my ability. I recognize the power of the Toya Talks platform and the amount of women's lives and careers it's transformed. And I'm never going to give you less than 100%. In fact, I always give over 100%. And I just felt like what was recorded as a result of losing the episode was just not a good reflection of me. And you can hear it in my tone. I was raging. Because for me, it's like, where do I even start? Because when I prepare for these episodes, I have a skeleton of what I want to talk about. And it is free flowing. So you can imagine now getting to the end of a podcast that's an hour and 30, hour and 20 minutes, and you lose everything and you manage to recover 20 minutes of it. And then, it was literally just a mess. And I had an opportunity to think, and I said to myself, do you know what? Sometimes the universe does certain things to communicate with us. And I know what message the universe was trying to communicate with me last night. But the reality is this. There is an episode every single Tuesday. I will maintain consistency and I will talk on the things that need to be spoken as I support, teach and motivate Black women how to navigate the world of work safely and light the path of their own success. So before we get into the meat that is the Toya Talks episode, I really want to speak on the video that has literally gone viral of a Black man in America, New York, in Central Park, and he was bird watching. Whatever it was that he was doing. And he saw a white lady who happens to be Karen, and she was with her dog. And the certain section where Karen was with her dog, where this Black man was, you're not supposed to have your dog without a leash. The Black man kindly says to her, no raised tone, no attitude, nothing. Can you please put your dog on a leash? Because this area of the park, you need to have your dog on a leash. This white woman went into meltdown. What was scary is what was then recorded. This woman picks up her phone. Well, first of all, she tries to get in his face, tells him to stop recording. Because one thing I know about white women like Karen, they don't want any evidence of their racism. They want to be able to weaponize their racism how they want to weaponize it. And they prefer it without any type of evidence to the fact that she calls the 911 and she said, there's an African American man, he's harassing me. And then her voice becomes, and then she's wrestling with the dog as well. And as an operator on the other side of the phone, receiving this type of phone call, it would sound like this woman is out of breath, she's distressed. You would even kind of not be blamed to assume that she was running. And you can hear the dog breathless as he's fighting her. And it's the way, it's an African American man. She's standing still, wrestling with her dog. And I said this on my social media platform, and I'm going to put it on record and say it here on the podcast. White women cannot sit here and tell me they don't see race. No person that is not Black can tell me that they don't see race. Because let me tell you, when they tell you they don't see it, they see our race in HD. Because to tell a Black person you do not see race, that means you're trying to say that you do not see me. To understand understand the gravity of what Karen did is to understand that had this African American black man not had the good sense to record this woman, the police could have come there, believed this white woman's story, tased him, shot him, and killed him, and that would have been his end. All because he was telling a woman that it was not right for her to have the dog. And to be honest, the way that dog was behaving, that dog needed a leash, whether or not it was in a place where it needed to have a leash on, it needed a leash. She needed a muzzle. I could not believe and you know, after obviously the issue that I had with, you know, not being able to record the episode, and then watching that video, I watched that video twice and every hair on my body stood on end at the fact that we were literally witnessing Karen in action in her most dangerous form. And when we think about the workplace, white women, I'm going to go on record and say this, and when I talk about white women, I'm not talking about every single white woman because I can't speak on every single white woman, but I will say the majority of white women in the workplace weaponize their tears, and they know how to weaponize it. This woman, Karen, didn't say, oh, there's a man. She knew exactly the script to read from. This African-American man, I put it to you, this is not her first time. This is just her first time having been recorded doing her madness. And what I can never understand is, if you were to ask her what her intention was, all the excuses she would give, oh, I was having a bad day. White women are always going through something. Whenever they are being racist, whenever they're called out on their racism, they're always going through something as a justification for their racism. I'm going to say it here, and I really do not care who it offends, because I'm offended as a black woman that every time we step out of our homes, we are risking our lives. We are risking our jobs. Every single time you call out a white woman or you have a disagreement with a white woman, you're putting yourself on the firing line, because all that white woman needs to do is cry. Because they see as black people that we are strong, and they are intimidated by our strength. In the office, they want to tear us down. They don't want to see us there. They're happy to date a black man, but they don't want to see the black woman. And if you get the real perpetual racists, they will do whatever it takes to assert their white privilege. If a white person sits in front of you and tells you that they don't believe in white privilege, you better run. Because not only do they believe in that white privilege, they're not afraid to use it. And as Karen taught us, she is willing to use it. At any time she feels to, she can switch it on like a switch, and she will. So when I'm seeing on social media, oh, it's discriminatory to call a white woman Karen. We call you Karen, we call you Becky, we call you Sarah, we call you Emma. We call you what you are called. And we call you racist. Karen was racist. She was discriminatory. In fact, I'll go as far as to say that she was tap dancing over attempted murder. She was attempting to use her whiteness to murder a black man for asserting his right to use the park safely. And do you know where it all stems from? Because white people think they own everything, and we are in their lands. We are in their world. But what they don't understand is when they go on holidays to Africa and they're coming back to a lot of the countries that the British Empire tried to steal and take from and still doing, they think that they have a right to be there, because they don't believe that we have a right to own anything, because they are raised to believe that it's their right. It's Karen's right to be in the park. It's Karen's right to operate in the park how she wants to. But I put it to you, had it been the black man that had his dog off a leash, she could have thrown herself on the floor until the dog attacked her. You see, there is no evidence required when a white person is asserting their whiteness. But as a black person, when we are just trying to live and operate in a society that has been constructed against us, we need to protect ourselves. Do not underestimate the power in what that African American black king did. He was preserving his life because he understood that his life was in danger. And that's why he took out his phone. So imagine living a life whereby you know you have to have your phone charged in case you need to record a white person moving mad. You can no longer go jogging in your neighborhood at the prospect of somebody shooting you down. You can no longer operate in a park without a white person trying to chastise you or have you killed by police who we know in America are known for shooting first and asking questions later. And Karen knew that too. Karen knew the power of her whiteness and she exercised it at Central Park in New York, America. She is a representation of everything that is so wrong and so dangerous about today's society. People will say, oh, it's only in America. Let me tell you, those Karens are gaining strength. And they are also operating here in the UK. They're operating in our offices. They're operating in places where they know that they are not happy with seeing us there. They operate in the offices when they accuse us of being aggressive. They operate in the offices when they tell us what they're going through to justify their endemic racism that they exercise on a daily basis. Let it be known now, Karen, we can see you, we can hear you, and we will call you out on your bullshit. We will now evidence your crap because we are no longer falling for it. We see you for who you are. So if there was ever a doubt that the Karens, Sarahs and Emmas of this world weren't aware of the weaponization of their whiteness, we now know that not only are they aware, they are informed and they're willing to do what is necessary to eliminate the black woman, the black man who poses a threat to them. We pose a threat to them when they see us in the offices where they've closed the door on us. We pose a threat to them when we exercise the right to live and enjoy our lives in the park. It is dangerous to assume. It is dangerous to assume that there are white people out there that don't know exactly what they are doing. Oh, there's an African American man. He's abusing me. He's recording me. He's insulting me. He's attacking me. This man did not raise his voice. This man did not hurl abuse. This man did not say anything derogatory. He said, please, ma'am, this is an area where dogs need to be on the leash. Please put your dog on the leash. And this could have resulted in this man's death. Simply because Karen wasn't happy with being told what to do. And that's what it boils down to. Disgusting. So that's how I started my day today. I saw that video. I was just in a really, really, in a headspace that I was just not in a good headspace. And it reiterated to me the importance, like I said before, as Black people, of understanding strategically how to protect ourselves and protect our jobs. It is often said that in workplaces, Karen, Sarah, Emma and Becky, oh, they're going through something, they can't turn up at work today. The minute a Black person tells you they can't turn up to work, you're asking us for a doctor's note. It's not even been 48 hours, you want a doctor's note. The bar and the measure of Black people in the office is very different to that of Emma, Karen, Becky and Sarah. And as Black people, it's high time now that we start putting things in place to protect ourselves. When I first was telling people about the need for burn folders, I was accused of being calculated. What would you call Karen in Central Park? You just have to come about them smarter. You just have to come about them strategic. I'm so sorry. I don't believe in going head on because we're always going to lose, because white privilege is not a privilege we can benefit from as Black people. So we are always going to lose if you go head on. But if you go smart, it's different. So look at it now. That video has gone viral. Karen has lost her dog to the dog sanctuary where she rescued that dog rescue centre. She's on administrative leave pending investigation. It is unequivocally unacceptable to ever even insinuate that she wasn't racist. You know, when we define racism and what racism means to us, it's very different when you are overtly racially discriminate. discriminated against. When you are covertly discriminated against, it's hard to prove. So, for instance, it's not like Karen used an abusive or racial slur against that African American king. But the thing she said, the weapons that she threw, the weaponization and the use of her white privilege makes what she did racist. But there are still some people that will say maybe she was just scared. It's racist. It's overt racism, but it's racist. You know, as if he was white, she would not do that. And she made clear what her issue is. He is an African American man. In the workplaces, they are not overtly racist. They are covertly, because they have now learned new ways to dispense of their racism. And you now go into HR, who you think is on your side, by the way. We've dealt with that before, haven't we? Because we know that human resources are not there to resource humans. But you have no evidence. The only evidence you have is how it made you feel. And you're telling another white person, who's probably in HR, that your white manager racially discriminated against you. And this is why I say sometimes you have to play the waiting game. Racists always slip up. They always do. Karen, this is not her first time being racist. It's just the first time that she slipped up and it was recorded. Let's learn some lessons from what we saw there. I'm never afraid to take my phone out. I'm racially discriminated against when I'm driving. When I am driving on that A406 or on that A13, and these white men in their vans, in their big lorries, are seeking to intimidate me because they're not happy that I'm actually sticking to the speed limit. But if I was now trying to move lanes, nobody will allow me the opportunity to move lanes. What they're happy to do is cut me up, intimidate me, cause me to cause an accident as they wield their white privilege. How dare I be on their roads in my nice car? And in those covert moments of racism, how do I deal with it? I got a dash cam. I may not be able to prove what you're doing is racist, but I'm going to prove that you've been reckless and dangerous on the road, putting my life at risk. And I will throw in there for good measure that if I was a white woman, would you have done that? Probably not, since you've allowed other white women to navigate that road, navigate those lanes. But it's me, the black woman. No. I've got my dash cam. You are being recorded, bumper sticker. We're doing things the right way around here. Protect black people. Protect us. But in order for us to receive that protection, we have to be willing to protect ourselves. In the workplace, you are walking into a white construct. So why would you then say it's unfair? It's already unfair. You know it's unfair. But how are you walking in to protect yourself? Oh, you shouldn't have to think like that. You shouldn't do. But our African American king didn't think that when he was going for his morning or afternoon or evening walk, his bird watching, that he would be covertly racially discriminated and his life would literally be on the line. If it wasn't for his quick thinking and the covering of the blood of Jesus, that would have been his end. Maybe say if he didn't have any battery life on his phone, he couldn't record it. Do you know what? I have to leave that topic alone because I can go on about it for days. What I do want to talk about is the living legend, the great man himself, that is Mr. Michael Jordan. I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to watch The Last Dance on Netflix. It is honestly, it makes for sensational viewing as it charters the rise of the career of Michael Jordan, the highs and the lows, but more importantly, how he navigated his workplace, that is the basketball court, and his bosses that were the NBA and the owners of the Chicago Bulls. I was inspired. And I have made some notes and some key things that I think that are important to learn from his career. Michael Jordan was from humble beginnings. Like, let's be real, like nothing was ever given to him. He fought for everything. And There were so many running themes in The Last Dance. And it isn't until the final episode you fully appreciate why this documentary was entitled The Last Dance. But let's not run before we walk. When you walk into a workplace as a black person, I always say to people, you need to be a subject matter expert in what you do. What do I mean by subject matter expert? You need to know your job better than your boss. You need to ensure that you know your job and deliver on your job well enough and become as integral as possible, because that's the only way you're going to secure your job. Michael Jordan was a phenomenal basketball player. I mean, to the extent that he was so driven by succeeding, by success. He was so driven by his humble beginnings that he made sure that he took the time to learn his craft, to practice, to analyze how other players played from other basketball teams. And every time he hit that court, he was better than the last time. Don't get me wrong, he didn't win every single match. But let me tell you something, he put up a good fight. Because he realized that the only way to keep his job was to fight for his job. And that fight came every single day. That he had to go onto that basketball court and play games of his life. He played every game like it was his last. He was a monster. And where does that come from? It comes from poverty. It comes from watching our parents suffer. It comes from being born as first generation immigrants. He realized that his love for basketball would only be appreciated if he was at the top of his game. He also realized that there comes a point whereby when you're playing for a team, you need to be able to create allies. What do I mean by allies? Strategic allies that you can lean on and recognizing you're not always going to be the star of the show. But respect is given. Sometimes when you know when to take a step back and allow other people to shine. In a job, you're not always going to shine, you know. Some of the best roles I have ever had haven't necessarily just been because I was good at my job. It's also because I created allies, and sometimes allies in my team. And I would take the time to train, allow them to shine. And on the face of it, it looks like I'm pouring into this person, but really, I'm also building my skill set as a leader. If you're looking for your managers to send you to leadership courses, as a black person, I'm so sorry. Do you think they want you to be learning how to be a leader, to lead them? I will never forget the day one young lady said to me, she's got a call with her manager about additional training. I should wish her luck. No, I can't wish you luck, because you still think that your manager owes you that training budget. What have you done yourself to better yourself? What have you done? She soon came back to me and told me that the manager said he can't help her with any additional training and training budget, so that she could basically add to her skill set and be better than her in her job. Why would they? You're a black woman. That comes to, when it comes to white people, being a black woman shakes the core of that devilish spirit that often some of them have. They don't want to see us win. So why do you think they're going to give you access to their training budget? No, they'll give the training budget to Karen. Yeah, Karen, she just needs a bit of motivation. She's going through a lot at home. When is Karen not going through something at home, please? Is she the only one that have home? So when you are talking about how can I be better at my job, sometimes it's recognizing that maybe you are the leader. Maybe you are highly regarded and looked up to. But in training juniors, in being a safe pair of hands, in delivering over and beyond and being a subject matter expert, it sometimes requires you to be smart enough to understand where you can grab those skill sets. I learned how to be a leader by training junior members of staff. Because as long as I was delivering and making my manager look good, I never had no issue with her. Some of these managers have never seen classroom. They just kiss ass, use their passport of white privilege as they climb the career ladder. Then they will be looking at you and expect you to have PhD in everything. All these hoops that you have to jump through to even be able to get an interview. Meanwhile, the person interviewing you hasn't even finished primary school. Who were Michael Jordan's allies? Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen. And in their own right, they were phenomenal basketball players. But they were the dream team. The entire Chicago Bulls team understood their strengths and weaknesses. And I'm not going to sit here and lie, they feared Michael Jordan. But I think that when you see greatness and it's something that you're not prepared for, it's often the default reaction to fear it. When some of you start new jobs and you go into new jobs, some of you almost create a pitfall for yourself. You almost create hurdles for yourself because some of you fail to do your observations. You go in there bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and often I can understand it. Maybe you've been unemployed for a long time. Maybe this is the organisation that you've always wanted to work at. And rather than understand the white construct of the workplace and the dynamic of a team that you're working at, you just propel yourself into this world of work and you're unprepared. And then you become shocked and surprised when things start to work against you. When you go into an organisation, you need to do your observations. Where are the strengths and weaknesses in this team? What are the strengths and weaknesses in this manager, this line manager? What are my key objectives? It's for you to draft your key objectives and to get your manager to sign off on it. Because many of us, when we start new roles, you're on probation, especially if you're a perm member of staff, you're on probation. And the only way to safeguard your role is to come up with objectives that are agreed with your line manager and periodically looked at, I'd say bi-weekly, to ensure that you're on the right track to achieving those short objectives. And their objectives should be 6 months or 3 month objectives, the same time period as your probation. Because you do realise that when you do things like that, and then all of a sudden they tell you that they're extending your probation, but each and every time you've been having these bi-weekly meetings and they've been signing you off, and suddenly they're extending your probation, you do have grounds to appeal. Remember I said, safeguarding your job, doing your observations. It's your responsibility to keep your job. It's not your manager's job to keep your job. Michael Jordan realised in order for him to be great and to maintain his job, he had to have key objectives. How did he develop his key objectives? It's through his allies. Because let's be honest, if he was an amazing basketball player and everybody hated him, how long do you think he would have lasted? How long do you think he would have lasted at the Chicago Bulls? All you would have been hearing is stories. And don't get me wrong, those stories still came out about his team members. But more than not, he had a majority, if not more than 80% of his team members that respected him enough to back him. Listen, the world of work is strategy. If you're not willing to be a work politician, then you really need to think about maybe opening your own business and working for yourself. But if you want to be successful in the workplace, you need to be able to carry out strategic steps in order to secure your own job. Watching The Last Dance with Michael Jordan is instrumental if you are looking at how the world of work works. It was so interesting, so many themes. Part of being successful in the workplace is developing credibility, a safe pair of hands where the quality of what you deliver is unmatched. You are trusted and believed. And we watch Michael Jordan as he progresses through his career in The Last Dance, develop his credibility. In developing his credibility, he continued to make his head coach, his team, the owners of the Chicago Bulls, look good. Because he was winning championships. He was delivering. He was making sure that he was cultivating and harvesting the strengths of his allies. He was creating a legacy for himself. And more importantly, if he was then to request more money, he was already working on making sure that he was creating an evidence of success that would give him the leverage to negotiate more money. But money was never an issue when it came to Michael Jordan. I never once heard anything to do with money being an issue with him, because they realized the value of what Michael Jordan brought. And that's just the thing, isn't it, in the workplace? If you do what needs to be done and you're strategic, you then increase your value and in turn increase your leverage. I've told you guys about feedback folder, burn folder, doing your observations. Credibility and loyalty. Michael Jordan, when he was developing, his career as it was developing was going from strength to strength. And now he was becoming a businessman because he recognized that there's going to come a day when he will no longer be able to play basketball. How am I going to utilize my skill set? How am I going to utilize all this hard work and turn it into a business? It was actually his agent manager that came up with Air Jordans, coined the phrase. And Michael Jordan always wanted to collaborate with Adidas to develop the Air Jordan brand. When he had the meeting with Adidas, he realized that they weren't coming to the table with the money that he deserved. His agent said, okay, let's speak to Nike. Nike understood the brand that Michael Jordan was developing. They saw his worth and future potential to make them, at the time, millions, at present now, billions. And he signed with Nike. But remember I said credibility. Michael Jordan then was called to play for the USA team at the Olympics. So obviously at the Olympics, it's now nothing to do with the NBA. It is actually the best of the best basketball players in the NBA team. And Michael Jordan, of course, was one of them. And the actual USA Olympics uniform was actually sponsored by Reebok. Now, if you understand from a competitive perspective, Adidas, Nike and Reebok, they're in the same field of what they produce. But remember, Michael Jordan was now signed to Nike. So can you imagine him going on the podium as part of the USA team in the uniform that is draped in Reebok signage? He couldn't do that. Do you know what this man did? He wrapped his body he had his USA uniform on, and then he wrapped his body so that it was covering any branding that showed Reebok. And Reebok was going crazy, of course, because they wanted to leech onto Michael Jordan and say Michael Jordan wore our outfit at the USA Olympics. And he was like, no, I've signed with Adidas, with Nike. And that is where my loyalty lies. Credibility. People need to see you in action, walking in your truth. If you say you're amazing at your job, deliver. If you are a subject matter expert, demonstrate it. Credibility talks to your integrity. And Michael Jordan's integrity was unmatched. I thought that was so poignant. Even more so because he understood business. Listen, employees, I'm yet to meet a rich employee. But it depends what you define as rich. If it's from a monetary point of view, I've never met a rich employee. But you have to position yourself in a certain way in your organization so that at least you can reach your peak earning potential. How? You need to be loyal to yourself. You need to give yourself credibility. If you are good at what you do, you are willing to put the time in to cultivate it. It's not for your managers to do. If you are a subject matter expert, in something, you need to own it. And in owning it, in making sure that you know your job better than your manager, it's going to be very, very hard for them to get you out. I do it as a challenge. The first 6 months of my probation, I make sure that I do all my observations. I create and select the right allies. I build my credibility on my immediate ability to deliver. And I allow my work to speak for itself. And that's what Michael Jordan did. How many of you go into a job and are absolutely terrified that if you negotiate or even speak about the possibility of wanting more money, that they're going to rescind the job offer? There's a lot of you. Scared, worried. While these Oyibo people are heavily relying on you being subservient. They heavily rely on you just accepting what they give you without even challenging. Why is it that we are made to feel like we can't even open the conversation for the possibility of negotiation? We just have to accept what we're given. That's what Scottie Pippen did in The Last Dance. You know, you can't talk about Michael Jordan without talk about Scottie Pippen. It's impossible. When Scottie Pippen was drafted into the Chicago Bulls, obviously, he's not thinking about the business element. He's just happy to leave his humble beginnings to play something that he is passionate about. He began to excel, be an expert in the position that he played in. And he became very resentful because he realized he'd sold himself short. So when now he was trying to open up the conversation about money, they said, no, you signed a contract. And many of us, we do that. We know we're worth more, but we don't ask for more. We're hoping that they see that we're good enough, and then automatically they give to us. It doesn't work like that. I've been in roles in my early 20s where I wouldn't negotiate a contract or a salary. I take that role and realize this job is more than what they made it out to be. And you're giving blood, sweat and tears, and at the end of it every month, you're looking at that pay slip and you're angry. But the person who did it is you. What is the worst that can happen if you open up the conversation of negotiation? Isn't it no? A lot of these organisations, they know what they're doing, you know, especially when they advertise roles and they don't put the salary. If you don't put the salary, I'm going to ask you on the phone before I've even gone to an interview. Because I need to understand, number one, is whether I want this role. And number two, that does this salary reflect what I would expect for somebody at my level? Don't be a Scottie Pippen, accept whatever, and then halfway through realise, oh my God, this is not good enough. And to watch it was quite painful because Scottie Pippen was probably watching everybody else who probably negotiated their contracts and he was the lowest paid. This man was delivering, but he was the lowest paid. And I thought to myself, what a great lesson as professionals for us to learn the importance of open up dialogue. Because let me tell you something. When they want you to stay late for a project, they know how to open that dialogue. When you leave work at 5 o'clock because you finish work at 5 o'clock, they know how to open that dialogue to do those cheap jokes about you leaving early when you know that the time to leave is 5. Oh, you're leaving early. So if they feel comfortable, our oppressors, to open up that dialogue, why is it that us as black people, us as who have fought to be in the positions where we are, don't want to open that dialogue because we're scared that they're going to say no? Listen, any organisation that refuses to negotiate a contract at the point of a job offer is a problem for me. It shows inflexibility, and that's a red flag. I've often rejected job roles because organisations don't want to negotiate. Because if you don't want to negotiate with me when you don't know me, will you negotiate with me once I'm in the thrusts of the job delivering? Because I know I'm a subject matter expert. I've invested the time in me. And if you like what you see enough to offer me a job, you should like what you see enough to come to the table with me and have a compromise. If you can't compromise with me about salary, Are you going to compromise with me about taking extended time off, maybe because I want to go and see my family in Nigeria? If you can't compromise with me, if I want to work from home, are you going to be able to compromise that? Listen, there are telltale signs of an employer at the very early stages if you do your observations properly. There is no how and no way that you can talk about Michael Jordan's success as a basketball player without mentioning the head coach that is Phil Jackson, living legendary coach. He is amazing in understanding how to get the best out of his team. But what happened to Phil Jackson was so interesting because it speaks to one thing with white people, yeah? Everything will be going great. Everything will be going good. But yet they have to find a problem in even the good. And this is why it's important. In every job you have, you need to know when it's time to leave. Some people don't know when it's time to leave a job. But sometimes for your own mental health, for your own success in your career, you have to know when to leave. And I had to learn that lesson. I've had certain roles where I'm like, I know I'm probably going to retire here. I've had certain roles where I'm like, this is my job for life. And I've come to realize, number one, there's no such thing as a job for life. If anything, if you didn't know it before, you should know it now due to this pandemic. But more importantly, knowing when to leave on a high. And I've always said to myself, I've always given myself a certain time that I spend in any role. And that's more because for me, I feel like because of the trajectory of my career, I can't stay stagnant in one organisation. So for me, the test of knowing when to leave is when I'm no longer learning anything new that adds and develops my skill set. When my role becomes so repetitive that I don't even need to think before I deliver it. That I am no longer inspired and motivated, that I have done and given everything to this job and made sure that I have been able to be the best that I can be in this particular role, and I have set certain milestones in my career in order to achieve certain things in a certain role that will add to my skill set. When I'm no longer doing that, it's time to leave. So that usually happens 2 to 3 years. And then I'm out, I go. And I always say to myself, wherever I go to has to be either a new industry, a different industry, or an industry whereby my skill set can be utilized and I am able to learn and grow. Because if you stay stagnation is not evidence of growth. It's evidence of being comfortable. Phil Jackson, the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, ensured, equipped, and enabled the Chicago Bulls to win 5 NBA championships. Can we please just take a minute to deep that? With the dream team, with the formation. He knew how to guide and speak the language of the basketball players to get the best out of them. I put it to you that it is because of Phil Jackson that the team were what they were. Now, obviously, Phil Jackson has bosses. His bosses are the owners of the Chicago Bulls and Jerry Krause, who was the general manager of the Chicago Bulls at the time. Now, Jerry Crouch is a short man, and I'm going to say this, I am terrified of short men because they're always angry, they've always got something to prove, and they are making up for the fact that they feel inadequate because of the lack of their height. So they run around like crazy Tasmanian devils, moving mad. They're usually in their big position, but they throw their weight around. Every short manager I've ever worked with, or any short man colleague that I've worked with, they all got a problem. And I don't care who it offends, it is the truth. That is my experience. I'm going to speak to my experience. So they're winning championships. And when we're talking about championships, we're talking about money. Chicago Bulls was a rich basketball team because they kept delivering. Do you know Jerry Crouch decided to go and have a press conference to tell the press that the reason for their success is not because of the basketball players. This is the madness I'm talking about when it comes to short white men. This is the madness. How can you say that the success is not down to the players? I mean, it is the players that are winning the matches. So how is it not down to... Don't get me wrong. I definitely agree to an extent that the players are supported and they have a great coach and things like that. But 90% of the reason why Chicago Bulls was doing well is because they were winning matches. And the people who were winning matches were the basketball players. And the general manager was a general manager. He was not a basketball player. That was his problem. Because he didn't like the fact that the light wasn't shining on him. He hated the fact that actually... the reason for the success, the integral reason for the success is the head coach, Phil Jackson. Do you know what Jerry Crouch did, what that general manager did? He went a step further. He said, listen, Phil Jackson, this is your last year. You will no longer be the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. Phil Jackson was just looking at him like, I'm winning. I'm giving you, I'm over-delivering. And you're telling me this is my last year? When Michael Jordan came to hear of this, Michael Jordan said, listen, if Phil Jackson leaves, I leave. Remember, Michael Jordan's credibility, his loyalty, it was who he was. He's like, no. I know what makes me great at my basketball. And part of that is Phil Jackson. So if he goes, I go. You know, one thing is, if you don't know your worth, if you don't know what you bring to the table, you do realize that a lot of these managers will treat you like fried rice, just throwing you all about the place, mixing it up, not seeing you for what you are and the greatness that you possess. Do you know, after the 5 championships, the owner of Chicago Bulls called Phil Jackson. He said, listen, I know what the general manager, Jerry Crouch, said, but put that to one side. I want you to come back again. I want you to win a 6th championship. I know you can do it. Whatever you want, I give it to you. Is it money? I'll give it to you. Forget all of this. You're not coming back. Please, we want you back. Phil Jackson said, well, I need to think about it. Phil Jackson knew that it was time for him to leave. They'd already humiliated this man and basically told him, no, after this, you're out. Now you're backtracking because you're realizing that not only would you be losing money, but you're going to be losing a team that was constructed by Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson decided to leave. And with that, the dream team was disbanded. Michael Jordan went back into retirement. Scottie Pippen was traded. I'm not sure what happened to Dennis Rodman. I don't think he stayed though. And you know that Phil Jackson, the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, left to become the head coach of the LA Lakers and gave them NBA championship wins. So he left Chicago Bulls and then he went to LA Lakers and he made the LA Lakers team great. Phil Jackson knew his worth. I can stay here and be treated like I'm a piece of crap. You're basically sitting there telling me what you're doing is great and it's fantastic and you're delivering, but we don't want you anymore. And they were haunting him with this every match. They were reminding him, you'll be out, you'll be out, you'll be out. And he knew when it was time to go. He left on a high. He left on his own terms and he left with dignity. How many of you leave your roles on your own terms? Or how many of you are forced out? How many of you know your value and know when it's time to leave an organisation? How many of you know your worth in the workplace? I remember a role that I had, and I'd been in that role for about 2.5 years. I loved it. I was delivering on my contracts. I was a subject matter expert. I was a safe pair of hands. Junior members of staff would start. They would give them to me and say, oh, Toya, look after this. Take this one underneath your wing. Train them. I don't actually know what my boss was doing because between me and another member of staff, we were literally managing that entire team. At the end of year review, I said to them, I need more money. I would like a more senior title to reflect, what I have been delivering here. I had a folder of all the feedback, all the key contracts that I had delivered. Everything that would testify to the justifiable reason why you would give me a pay rise. Do you know what they said to me? That they don't have money in the budget at the moment, but it's something they will look at later on in the year. Listen, when you go into those type of meetings, you know that there's a possibility that they'll say no. But knowing me, I don't put my career in the hands of people who do not know my worth. I don't do that. I had already started having interviews. Then the job offers came. One role was $5,000 more than what I was on. One role was $10,000 more. I said to myself, I'm at the height of my role here. I'm recognized by the CEO and senior members of staff. My allies talk about me in spaces where I'm not in. And more importantly, I'm absolutely exceptional at my job. It is time to leave. Do you know when I resigned, they were shocked. But my thing is, you haven't done anything to keep me, so why should you be shocked? You know why they're shocked? Because they really think that we as Black people are subservient to them. So therefore, we should even be grateful that they've given us a chance and opportunity. And when you now deliver over and beyond and say, please, I want more, they almost seem offended that you want more. You should just be grateful for the little crumbs that they give you. No, I don't want crumbs. I'm so sorry. My ancestors did not sacrifice themselves for me to be accepting crumbs. No, I cannot. Crumbs are for the birds, not for Toya. I said no. When I left with dignity. I did the handover. Everything they never did for me when I started, I made sure I did for them. And you know how powerful that was? They couldn't even find anyone to replace me for 3 months. At that point, I decided to go and start my own limited company. I didn't take any of those job offers. I found a contract I was working at. And then that same organization, I offered them my services. So that money that they weren't willing to increase my salary by, they were paying 6 or 7 times more than that as a day rate, because now I'm a contractor. Look at the sense. When these people say they don't have money, they've got money. What they're saying is they don't have money for you. And you've got to get to a point where you understand that it's important to see what's happening in the market. I say it all the time. You need to see what's happening in the market, in your sector. It's your responsibility. And in understanding what's happening in the market, you're able to position yourself in the right way. Every 6 months, you should be reviewing your role. Am I getting what I need out of this job? Is this job serving me? Is this job adding to me? And at any one time, if the answers are no, it is now your responsibility to see other opportunities, have conversations. Listen, I was going to interviews at lunchtime, after work, and using my day off. I don't owe it to them to explain to them what I am doing. That is my business. Because let me tell you something. A lot of those managers are on salaries and roles that they make sure that we don't have access to. So it's high time you start putting yourself first and not allowing your manager to dictate how far you will go in your career. Knowing when to leave an organization is imperative. And in the documentary, The Last Dance, I watched Phil Jackson understand what his value was. And he realized that this is the peak of his success. And in order to define and seal his success, he needed to recreate the success of the Chicago Bulls in another team. To almost say to the owners of Chicago Bulls, you didn't value me enough. There is somewhere else that will value me. And that's exactly what happened. And that's the lesson I learned from that. So yeah, that is the documentary. That is The Last Dance. And it is on Netflix. There are now 10 episodes. And I would recommend that as a young professional, it is important that you watch that. And I was taking notes. Oh, it was absolutely brilliant. But remember, one of the themes I've been talking on is knowing your worth. Recently, I was approached by a recruiter. They said, Toya, I've come across your CV, fantastic CV. There's this job role, and I think you will work perfectly with it. The projects that they have, I can see from your CV you've done and you've delivered on. And in fact, I would describe you as a seasoned professional in what you do, and I think they could really utilize your skill set. I'm a contractor. Cool. This is my day rate. She said, yep, reasonable. And one thing is, when we talk about reasonable day rate, it has to be reflective of where the commercial space is at the moment. So for example, if you charge 700 a day, in a pandemic, you can't be charging 700 a day. Or you have to reduce it and compromise and charge maybe 650 or 600 a day. And I had already worked out that I have to compromise my day rate. I'm not going to share what my day rate is because no one's business, but you understand the point. She submitted my CV. And this was the response I got that she got from the organisation and obviously forwarded on to me. Hi Toya, I've heard back from said company. I'm afraid they think you are too high level for the role. Now, I'm in Tesco car park in Beckton and I'm reading this and I'm so confused. Of all the excuses I have heard in my career as to the reason why someone doesn't get offered a job, either perm or interim, this by far is the most perplexing. Too high level for the role. Deep it. It is almost the equivalent of saying that someone's overqualified, but too high level for the role. So I messaged her back. I said, I'm a little bit confused. What does that mean? I would like the feedback to help me going forward with other possible potential roles and also from more a reflective perspective. She says, Toya, I can't explain that because even when they said it to me, you know, they're the client. I'm not going to ask them what they mean by it. I just accepted it. But even for me as a recruiter, it's the first time I've ever seen anything like that. That don't really help me. But I deeped it. Karen, Tony, Steve, Michael, and Becky, whichever one of them that saw my CV, they were shaken to their bare bones because they realized that while they have been faking it on their white privilege, some of us have been putting in the hard work to justify the reason why we are subject matter experts. We have cultivated our career. We have sown into our career. So when they saw my CV, it highlighted to them what they don't have. And what they're not going to do is have somebody who is too high level, seasoned professional, working in their organisation. Because I would highlight where their flaws are, and they don't want that. So they want somebody who is low level. So let me get this right. You don't want the quality of somebody who has delivered this type of project time and time again successfully because they're too high level. So does that mean that you're looking for somebody who is low level? Of course, because you need somebody on your same wavelength of low level. God knows that I'm definitely high level. I cannot be low level. And this is what we find ourselves up against. But the story doesn't end there. Today, I had a call from another recruiter recruiting for the same role. I didn't say anything. She told me the company. I knew this is the same company that says I was too high level. She has submitted my CV. She said, Toya, what rate? I said, oh. I thought about it. I was like, well, I know with another recruiter, they put me on a compromised day rate. Since these people, I already know they think I'm high level, then I will just stick to my day rate, high level day rate. This woman submitted me. The same company that said I was too high level. The same company that I'd compromised on my day rate. Are they not the ones now begging to come and see me for interview? And I say see me, I mean virtually, because I ain't going to nobody's office. When you know your worth and what you bring to the table, that is leverage. What is leverage? Leverage is power and bargaining strength. It's the ability to be able to come to the table and find an outcome that benefits you. So since you guys firstly rejected me, I was too high level. And I was even being nice with the day rate. You will now pay the higher level one because I already know you think I'm high level. This other recruiter doesn't know I'd previously been submitted for that role. And they obviously didn't tell her. Because when she gave the feedback, they said that they loved my CV. Definitely, I know what I'm doing. They need somebody who can hit the ground running because they have been trying to find somebody for a long time. No, they were trying to find somebody that was their level. And with every day that goes by, that project is not being delivered. Nobody will tell them to come and find high level. But high level comes with high money because you wanted to move mad and stupid. Therefore, you're going to pay the price for it. Literally. When you know what you're worth, you will no longer take crumbs. When you know what you are worth and you put respect on the sacrifices that you have made to get to where you are, you will no longer sell yourself short. There is a strength in knowing when to leave and walk away. There is a strength in knowing that if an organisation are not going to compromise with you, that this is not the organisation you want to work for. There is a strength in understanding an organisation that is forcing you to go back to work during a pandemic is a problematic employer. It's time to look for pastures new. And I'm not sitting here telling you it's easy. It's even made harder by a pandemic. But you need to put into the universe what you want. If you want a new role, you need to start looking. That's why I always say to people, don't start looking for a new role when you're desperate for a new role. Start looking for new roles when you're in a role and the role is going fine, but you just want to keep abreast of what's going on in the market. That's when you see the roles that are coming. You keep the line of communication open with recruiters. That is your job. That is part of being a subject matter expert, that you know the subject. How can you know the subject if all you know is the workplace? You need to know what surrounds your career. You need to know the latest legislation, the latest new gadget that is going on in the tech space, in your space. That is your responsibility, not your manager's. And you know the truly successful people? They know their craft inside and out, and you don't know your craft inside and out just in an office, because you only know your craft inside and out in an office and how your organization does it. But other organizations do things differently. Something that I'm realizing that is really needed is understanding and knowing the science behind negotiation. And if you have been following me for the however long, you know that I've got a website, toytalks.com, and on that website are masterclasses. At the moment, I've got 2 masterclasses. I've got a CV masterclass, turning your CV into an invite for interview, and I've got an interview masterclass, turning an interview into a job offer. And I am currently working on a negotiation masterclass, so that should be coming soon. I'm hoping next week, so first week of June, and I've got another masterclass talking about the mother-daughter relationship as well, which is often really traumatic, especially the African mothers. And I've not shied away from being honest about my tempestuous relationship with my mother and how it manifested in my life and my career, and my inability to kind of work cohesively with senior members of staff, especially if they were women, and how I had to turn that around and things like that. So those masterclasses are coming. Equally, understanding how the new world and the new commercial space is now going to be operating moving forward, especially under the pandemic, and understanding what your employment rights are, and asking the right questions, and feeling strong enough to understand that even though the pandemic has fundamentally changed the commercial space, as an employee, what are your rights and how do you go about asserting them? So, for example, your employers have a duty of care to you, and that duty of care is covered under Section 44 of the Employment Rights Act. Section 44 of the Employment Rights Act covers health and safety in the workplace. So it speaks to an employer's duty of care to its employees, and it says as follows: an employee has the right not to be subjected to any detriment by any act or any deliberate failure to act by his employer. And then obviously it goes on. And I definitely thought it was needed to discuss what your rights are as an employee. So for instance, I received a message today and someone said, listen, I'm a perm employee and thoughts on remote working for a black woman. Is it better to work in the office a few times, or can you build the trust and respect through remote working? I have the option to be completely remote or not after COVID-19. Now, I haven't responded to this young lady yet, because it is something I'm going to cover in the masterclass about what your rights are, and tell you guys certain things I think you should start thinking about, especially because pandemics are not necessarily covered in people's employment contracts. So I think from a commercial perspective, it's really important to understand what legislation supports you guys and what things you should be asking. Now, personally for me, if I was a perm employee and I'm living through a pandemic like each and every one of you, and you know that the BAME community, you know I don't like the term BAME, but we'll use it for the purposes of what I'm saying. The BAME community are more susceptible to contracting COVID-19 and therefore dying. And I know that there is no antidote vaccine for COVID-19. And I am a perm employee and I have the opportunity to work 100% remotely from home. Why would I not be working from home then? Like, why would I not encourage my employees to exercise their duty of care towards me? So are you saying to me that when Boris Johnson eases the lockdown and your employer says it's up to you whether you want to work 100% from home or you want to do a couple of days in the week in the office, and you know as a black person, black people have a propensity to contract COVID-19 and die, then why are you going to the office? Work from home. I know for some people it's easier said than done, like working 100% from home. It's difficult, I get it, because you need the interaction of staff members and things like that. But until a vaccine is found, if you have the option, you should be working from home. Why would you put yourself in harm's way by getting public transport, which is probably the breeding ground of every disease possible, because you want them to see you and recognize you? Remember, I've told you in this episode, it's not about seeing you. It's about what you deliver, what you stand for, being a subject matter expert, your credibility and loyalty by the delivery of your role, you giving 100% and making sure that you're doing the job to the best of your ability. That's what's important. No one cares about whether they can see you. And the managers that want to see you is because they're micromanagers. They're micromanagers and they don't know how to manage people that they can't see. That's mad, innit? I can only be your manager if I can see you. Wow. We hope that you can see cocoa butter to cream your legs. We hope that you can bath daily. And we hope that you can use soap and a sponge to scrub your body. You know what? I've always encouraged black women to take control of their careers, but it's also in taking control of your career, it's taking control of the health and safety that is owed to you by your employees. Don't feel as though you owe them risking your life so they can see that you're doing your work. The study that has been conducted, it's widely accepted that black people have a propensity to contract COVID-19 and therefore die. Mind you, I even have my own thoughts on that, because in Africa, they're not dying in the numbers that the UK are making it out, but we move. So if I know that that's the agenda being pushed by the government, that will support me wanting to work from home. And I think a lot of us need to now start getting used to what the new normal is going to look like and adapting. You can still be successful in the workplace during a pandemic. People are still getting jobs during pandemics. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like, don't allow your managers to intimidate you by their own fears of not knowing how to run their own company or run this company or manage you properly. Your focus needs to be on how you can get the best out of your role, and more importantly, how you can continue to grow and flourish in your own role. The management is for the management. They get paid for that. They get paid to worry about that. But where you are given the option to work from home as a black person, you need to exercise that option for your own health and safety. If anything, it's important. See it as a test to prove to yourself that you can still be as exceptional in or out of the office, and you can still deliver. You don't need somebody to be looking at you eyeball to eyeball to know that you're doing your job. So, what has been dominating the UK press at the moment is Dominic Cummings, who is the top advisor to your Prime Minister Boris Johnson, because he's not my Prime Minister. I did not vote for him. This Dominic Cummings, we are in a lockdown situation, okay? Now, most recently, they've eased certain things about the lockdown, but for all intents and purposes, we're still in a lockdown. This man had the symptoms, deep it. He had the symptoms of coronavirus along the same timeline that Boris Johnson did. Because remember, Boris Johnson didn't believe in COVID-19. He was shaking COVID-19 patients' hands, and then God humbled him and he contracted the virus. Dominic Cummings had the symptoms, so he had to self-isolate for 14 days. Instead of him to do that, he was driving up and down, breaking every rule and directive from the government about quarantining himself. And effectively, he was exposing other people to getting coronavirus. That's the truth. You know, when I learned, that if a manager in a workplace wants you to stay, they will fight for you. There has been calls for Dominic Cummings' resignation. Do you know what your Prime Minister said? No, I'm not sacking him. He's just a father. He was trying his best. You know, Oyibo people, when now that it comes to their rule breaking, they will now give us all the excuses. They're always going through something, remember. So Boris Johnson said, no, I'm not getting rid of him. So yesterday, Dominic Cummings did a press conference. I'm so sorry, you know when Oyibo people are lying, they will be looking red like tomato. Their lips will be as chapped as my back foot, because clearly I can't go get a pedicure. The corner of their lips will be filled of spit. In fact, their saliva will be disappearing. They'll be drinking water every 5 minutes. You know they're lying. Dominic Cummings was lying there, allegedly. He wasn't being completely honest. He wasn't. You know, some of these people, they don't think rules apply to them, because as far as they're concerned, their forefathers gave them this land and this world, so they can just do what they want. In fact, it's for us ethnics and foreigners to follow the rules. The rules don't apply to them. I need to understand what Dominic Cummings has on Boris Johnson, because the way Boris Johnson is fighting for Dominic Cummings, I know that in every workplace, there is a manager like Boris that is willing to fight for an employee. I've seen it now. Then I was just thinking, all those people that have been fined for breaking lockdown rules, can they now appeal their fines based on the fact that your own Prime Minister has given Dominic Cummings a blight? Because what Dominic Cummings did was very dangerous. He was willing to expose other people, because he was going up and down in his car. Even when they were doing the press conference, the press was asking him, did you go and put petrol in your car? Because they were trying to basically highlight the fact that he, in his recklessness, he basically could have exposed other people, and he contravened everything that the very government in which he advises had imposed. And it just further kind of pushed the reality that there's them and there's us. It did. There's them and there's us. And underneath it is the racism that pushes that agenda as well. When they didn't see the numbers of fatalities due to coronavirus in Africa, it was anger in their souls. It was even now, they can't explain how they now have concluded the fact that Black ethnic minorities and Asians are more susceptible to coronavirus and therefore dying. But those very ethnic minorities are in Africa and not dying in the same numbers that they're dying in the UK. That's because the people that are on the front line, a majority of them are ethnic minorities, Black and Asians. We're on that front line, so of course we're going to be dying in droves, because there's more of us on the front line in those type of roles whereby we are more likely to catch this disease. But they don't look at it like that. And remember how this pandemic started. It started with the arrogance of your Prime Minister, because he was shaking everybody's hand until he contracted it. Up until that point, he wanted to exercise herd immunity. I'm putting it to you now, this easing of the lockdown is herd immunity, because there's no vaccine. While there is no vaccine, there will be a second wave, because As we enter the colder months, it will be very difficult to differentiate between a common cold or flu and coronavirus. And without a vaccine, there is a high likelihood that there will be a second wave. If you're not sure if there will be a second wave, go to Costco or go to, I can't remember what shop it is now, where they're not even observing that 2 meter distance. Only recently that Costco decided, okay, we're going to adhere to that 2 meter distance. Go outside and see them lining in the car park. Some people really do think that this coronavirus it's not going to affect them. And the ones that think that is the ones that have their white privilege, because they think their white privilege will give them a pass to coronavirus. It's actually crazy. What this government is doing and what they're highlighting is their inability to truly understand the gravity of what this virus is and what it does. And all I'm going to encourage you guys to do is to be very, very careful. Don't get too excited because they've eased lockdown to now get on the trains, because Tony and Michael will still be picking their nose and digging out their bum and holding on to the rails. And then you get on that train, you'll be holding on to the rails, not knowing that that cough that he let out before he exited the train was symptoms of coronavirus. You better be careful. Me personally, I remote work. I don't see why I need to go to your office. You can courier over the laptop and everything else. We can have weekly calls. I don't need to look at you. I don't need to see you to know that you haven't washed that morning. So why don't we just work remotely so you don't have to wash at all? How about that? Anyway, guys, listen, I'm going to draw this episode of the podcast to a close. As always, I've enjoyed delivering this to you guys, and I'm really happy that the universe had it that I did lose the initial recording, but God's so kind, here I am recording it for you guys, and I'm on top form as I deliver it to you. I want to let you know that obviously, there's a new episode of the Toy Talks podcast each and every Tuesday. I'm going to encourage you guys to send me your dilemmas. I know you do it on social media. There's a lot of you that send me your dilemmas, but please send me your work-related dilemmas to hello@toyatalks.com. And we will talk about it here on the podcast. I'll give you my advice. I shoot from the hip. I'll give it to you straight, no chaser. But more importantly, I give you the practical skills to enable you to navigate the world of work safely as a Black woman. That is my ethos. That is first and foremost of importance with this platform, that Black women can go and light up the path of their success by being able to take some of the gems and advice that I provide on this platform. If you haven't already, make sure you go and check out my website, toyatalks.com. I'm really, really proud of it. It is a hub of all things Toy Talks related. We're talking about masterclasses. We've got some new masterclasses coming the 1st and 2nd week of June. And also, if you want to listen to a podcast, you can listen to it on there. If you want to book me for brand collaborations, all the information is in one central hub. All my speaking events, everything. Just go to the Toy Talks website. Everybody has given me such amazing feedback about how user-friendly it is and how it's easy to navigate. And it's also an opportunity, if you want to see everything in one place that is Toya Talks, there is a website that houses all of that. Also as well, I wanted to quickly, before we draw it to a close, if you guys are looking for programs to watch and things like that, because I get asked this all the time. So I'm currently watching 90 Day Fiancé Before the 90 Days, which is absolutely brilliant. It's so funny. Sometimes I just want to sit there. I don't want to kind of watch something that is, mentally labor intensive. But 90 Days Fiancé Before the 90 Days is fantastic. Also, Little Fires Everywhere is on Amazon Prime, featuring lead actresses Kerry Washington and Reese Witherspoon, who are two of my favourite actresses. Make sure you go and watch that. It deals with racism, mother-daughter relationship, deceit, perfection. There's so many themes running through Little Fires Everywhere, so definitely go and have a watch of that. Also as well, on YouTube, I follow three sisters called Chicane, and it's spelled SHIIKANE, Chicane TV on YouTube, and they do reviews on shows. They give their opinions about certain trending topics, things like colorism, discrimination. They review like reality shows and things like that, and I really, really enjoy watching them. So go and check them out on YouTube. And of course, on Netflix, you guys need to go and watch The Last Dance. That is chartering the rise and career of Michael Jordan and has been the main topic of this episode. If you would like to follow me on social media, of course, you are more than welcome to. My Instagram handle is Toya_Washington. The Toya Talks podcast Instagram handle is Toya_Talks. Or follow me on Twitter, #Toya Talks. My Twitter handle is Toya_W. And of course, my website, www.toyatalks.com. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Toya Talks podcast. If you're listening to me on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the podcast. My name is Toya Washington, and you have all been listening to the Toya Talks podcast.